Forktales, a podcast that feeds ideas to the food and beverage world. Forktales is brought to you by Vigor, a branding and advertising agency focused on the restaurant and hospitality industry, and by Quench, a food and beverage advertising agency that specializes in evolving iconic food and beverage brands. Learn more, visit vigorbranding.com and quenchagency.com. If you love what we're serving up, please give Forktales a 5-star review on your podcast service of choice. Think of it as a tip for good service.
Hi, welcome to Forktales. Today's guest is someone who is passionate about farm to table, passionate about reviving the downtown food and art scene in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is where we started. So it's a home game for us today. His name is Josh Kesler. He's a former Harrisburg Regional Chamber Entrepreneur of the Year and the owner of the Millworks. Josh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Michael, thanks for having me. It's a real honor to have me with you.
So, I mean, it's awesome. I was saying when we first started, before we started, that I can't believe I haven't met you. I've been doing business in Harrisburg. I started my agency 33 years ago and started out as Pavone. And now we have Quench, which is food and beverage CPG. We have Vigor, which is restaurants. And you've been in town here for a long time with several businesses. So it's really kind of cool to meet you. I'm looking forward to actually meeting you in person now because we're, like, again, in the same town. So
Yeah. Did you start? I probably have more questions for you than you have for me, actually. But did you start down on Cameron Street? But I would think you would have started somewhere else and then relocated down there.
That's a good question. We started on Boa Street, so we were in Midtown, and that's what you have revived. You've been a big part of the revival there. So yes, we started off of Boa Street. There's a little warehouse. It was in 1992. A guy I knew owned the warehouse. Real estate was in the toilet at the time. And he just had empty space. And he said, look, just give me, I think it was a couple $100 a month for this like kind of redone space. So we took it on and, it's the old saying, never forget where you came from. We couldn't afford furniture when I started the company. And inside this building was an old teacher's desk, right? Like the old, real heavy desks that you had when you were like a little kid in kindergarten. And so we used the desks and we painted them, painted one like a cow and funked up the other one and made it kind of cool. And that was like our furniture. So that's, those are the old days. And, we started with nothing. So, and to your point, I want to tell us about yourself, how you found yourself as a restaurateur and really the owner of Millworks and somewhat of a developer / entrepreneur. So talk about starting from the ground up. Like, let me hear your story.
Yeah, it is a really long, kind of meandering path, I guess, to get there. But so, I had some behavior problems in junior high, and I guess I was a smart kid, but just not really plugged in. And I found music when I was about 10. Started playing drums, and then, by 12, I was playing guitar and piano and essentially became a musician, through that period. I went to college. I studied German and political science, thinking I would get a real job with a German degree. I don't know. But in any case, I mean, music was really, what I was doing and what I was focused on, songwriting. And, I formed a band back then. And, we played for about 15 years and did about 4 or 5 albums. And, I still play classical guitar and, piano. And so, really my path started as a creative person. That was always my focus and, interest. After college, I taught German at the Harrisburg Academy for a little bit. Now my kids go there, which is weird, but
that's cool.
But you're not making much money there, and I was kind of pinching my rock and roll lifestyle at the time. So I left that and started a process of discovery, I guess. Went up to Alaska and worked on some fishing boats up there and crisscrossed the country a couple times, sleeping on couches, and lived in a squatter house for a while. Just really kind of bohemian lifestyle. And then I met my wife and we got pregnant, and then it was like, oh shit, What are we gonna?
No more
What are
sleeping
we
on
gonna?
couches.
Yeah, what are we gonna do now? So I was probably, as most other entrepreneurs, probably like you, I was terrified to have a 9 to 5 or
Yeah.
a regular job. Just just didn't speak to me.
Mhm.
There's something about that sort of normality that was a little depressing when I thought about it. So but when you think about trying to make your own way, it kind of sparked my interest. And at the time, I was working. I had met a guy that was in the real estate business, and I was working for him, painting windows and odd jobs. And I started seeing what he was doing, buying some sheriff sales, distressed properties, that sort of thing. And I saved up like $3,000 or $4,000, and I went and I bought my first house.
Mhm.
I was up on North 15th Street, in Harrisburg,
Mhm.
and I rehabbed that thing myself, which I had no idea what I was doing, and somehow was able to sell that house, and I was able to turn that profit around and buy two more houses. And then I started that. I slowly started that march. Now, again, with the motivation that I won't have to work a job.
Right.
And I did hear somebody say recently, only the entrepreneur is willing to work 80 hours so they don't have to work 40.
Yeah.
Have you heard
That's a
that?
great line. Oh, I've never
Uh,
heard it, but it's an absolute fact. Absolute fact.
right.
Yeah.
So, so because I'm like, okay, I'm trying to take care of the family, and this new son who's going to college right now, with no money, but also not have a job, so I can continue my music career essentially. So it was a means to an end. But I was pretty good at it. I liked it. I was pretty aggressive and focused, and the creativity. In my mind, Michael, and you probably, I would think that you found this as well, and being a business owner, that that creative training as a musician was really the training that I needed in the business world, because
Hmm.
in business it's essentially creative problem solving.
Hmm.
If you're gonna, there's no guidebook. You can go to business school, but it's really that creative nurturing training that I think creates a condition that you can get to the next step. You can
Hmm.
build a team. So in any case, um, I kind of, built up a mini little real estate empire, and that gave me enough juice over time to be prepared to do the millworks. I had been buying, liquor licenses and commercial properties by that point as well, so I was pretty fluid
Hmm.
in
Dev side.
historic
Yeah.
construction
Hmm.
and all of that. But also having a love of food when I was a kid. Parents would be at work, or you're home alone, or, during the summer, if you remember those times. You're
Oh yeah.
13, 14. Now there's probably more people around, but back then, we were on our own,
Yep. That's
and
right.
cooking omelets and burning
Yeah.
homemade pizzas, and all
Yeah.
the things that you start cooking. And then when you're poor and you're living on your own, man, you gotta, if you make a great meal, it's gonna be on the cheap, and
Hmm.
it's gonna be scratch cooking, that's
You
for
got to get
sure.
creative.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you gotta get
We
creative.
actually have a ton in common. And again, I just met you like virtually here. I was a below average, and my mom would say well below average student. I barely graduated. I was, I think, relatively smart, but relatively bad. Like I was always like in trouble. So
Yeah.
I guess I was a little, and whatever, hard to manage. Played the drums. Played in bands and drums. Was a
Did you?
creative. Thought, well, hell, I don't have to ever learn anything in school because I can draw, I can create stuff. And then, I ended up going to an art school. But there was a point in my life where, there was my bed in my little apartment. One on the left side was my drum kit, and the right side was my drawing table. And it was like, I remember waking up one day thinking, you're really not going to make a living on the left playing drums. It's fun and you can have a lot of fun doing it, but you're not going to be able to afford maybe rent next month. So you better focus on the thing on the right. So I really kind of focused in and locked in on my work as a creative. And ironically, the first job I got out of school was I did all the advertising for Tama drums and Ibanez guitars. Back in that was really? In the early mid 80s. So I worked with everybody in the music. So I was very much tied into music, art, and the whole scene. And it was in Philadelphia, believe it or not, and we're working out up in New York a lot with the musicians and stuff. So really kind of can get the whole vibe and understand where you're coming from. And then to couple that as we move forward as entrepreneurs, I mean, I took a risk. You had asked me where I started, and I started over in Midtown in Harrisburg. And most people are not going to even know where Harrisburg is. By the way, it's the capital of Pennsylvania, if you didn't know. And Harrisburg is like a city that's gone through some tough times. I mean, it's certainly seen its better days. I mean, we have some beautiful buildings here because of the capital, but it's really has seen ups and downs as many smaller cities in the country have. So I took a chance, and I'm terrible with time and space. I'd say it was like 1996, maybe 7. And I bought a bank building on Market Street in Harrisburg. And people thought I was crazy because, I bought an old abandoned bank building, historical site, restored it, got the historical accreditation. So now go into you did the same thing. Millworks, I mean, it's one thing to be a musician. It's another thing to make, burn pizzas and eggs. Then it's, and flip houses. Another thing to take over a massive project of the scale of the Millworks, and explain what it is, because it's not just a restaurant.
Yeah. So Millworks is an art collective. We have 35 working artists in there. There's almost 20 studios. So one massive wing of the building is essentially an art collective. And then on the other side of the building is a restaurant. We have a beer garden up on the roof. All seats all in is about 400 seats. So it's kind of a massive space. We have a brewery in the back, and it's in an old millwork factory that was built in the 20s. How I stumbled on this building was I had a friend that's an architect, and he was kind of between work after the Great Recession there. This is probably 2010, something like that, 11. And I took him up to show him this building. And I'm like, if you could find the right developer, man, this building's crackerjack up here. I've never been in it, but it's right next to the oldest farmer's market in the country. Mm-hmm. The area is a little transitional, but, it's got a lot of bones to it. And so I took him up there trying to sell him on it, seeing if he could find somebody that was stupid enough to take a crack at it. And I lined up a tour with the owner. It was for sale, and we went in, and it was like kind of like when you fall in love for the first time when you're 13 or 14. You get a little sweaty, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, this is it. And I had like a fever dream that night, and it's like that creativity just starts running. So it's the building's like 25,000 square feet. So I think that's probably what you were dealing with over there. Roof was falling in, dirt floors, but on the other side, not to go to the business side of it, but, we were in an environment where you could borrow money at 4%, 3.75. Right. So money was really cheap at the moment. And, I'm like, all right, let's do it. I remember driving my wife around the building, a couple days later, thinking that she would smack me upside the head and say,
talk you out of it, right?
Talk me out of it. And I said, well, let's drive down at night and let's get a real head check on this thing. And we drove down, and it just had a charm to it. And she's like, you should do it. Go for it. I said, well, we might lose everything doing it, because, people might not come down here. It was a big risk, but boy, as soon as we opened, it got traction and people engaged, and, that big risk paid off, but they don't always pay off, as we know.
No, they don't. No. And, any entrepreneur, anybody that's had success has done that. They've thrown it all on the line and they risked it all. And that's everyone that I've ever talked to on this podcast. They're all people that are entrepreneurs, large corporations, CEOs. Somewhere along the line in that business, someone somewhere took a massive, gamble. And that's what you got to do. And I always said, like, the folks I get to talk to on this podcast a lot of them are entrepreneurs. And I'm always fascinated by the stories because they're just wonderful stories. I don't care if it's if you have 3 or 4 restaurants or if you have 500, it's the same thing and it's the same passion. And I think you nailed something earlier too, when you talked about, like, you got sweaty and excited. I mean, you need to have that vision and that passion to see it through, or it's not going to happen, right? I mean, you just got to have that fortitude. You got to keep getting up. I'm sure you had a lot of things that went sideways and detours and pivots along the way, but you got to be willing to just kind of like suck it up and keep moving forward because you know where you're going,
Yeah, that's exactly right. And if you're not excited about it, you're probably not going to have the energy to push through those sideways moments. And do you think that there's just a little bit of a risk-taking nature to some people? I was prepared to lose it all if it didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, all right, well, we'll just start again. And,
when I started, I had nothing. I really didn't have anything to lose. I wasn't married. I didn't have any kids. I had $300 in my checking account. That's the truth. I just was like, $300, whatever, I'll get a job if I have to. So I really, so I didn't really have the capital, but there was things that were along the way though. The bigger risks I took were later on when you actually have something to lose. That's when you have a risk. So,
Yeah, that's the risky time where you're like halfway. It's, you hadn't just started, but you've been going long enough that you don't want to start over.
Mm-hmm.
But you got that passion and want to double down on it. So,
yep. So now I want to hit Millworks, and we'll get into some of the other things you're doing because Millworks, I went there, I was blown away. Food was phenomenal, but like to your point, you walk in and you have this sort of art vibe. You have this cool studio setting. People can go in there, they can buy different types of artwork from the independent artists. The smell of the food, the drinks, the whole thing. It's just got an energy about it. And what you did, I have got a lot of guys on here, like they start a restaurant, turns into a chain, or I have guys that create franchises. It's great stuff. But you kind of changed a city. You kind of changed Midtown, and people were starting to give Midtown a vibe, but it was really kind of like not much going on. And you really have become somewhat the heartbeat of that area. There's another gentleman that I'm friends with. He's going to be on eventually here. He's in Tulsa, and he did the same thing. Tulsa was really run down. There was like no place to go, and he kind of just was like, "Wow, these buildings, they're old buildings." And he ended up putting all these different restaurants in, and he was super successful with it. And so I just really admire that. I mean, that's not just what you did. Was not just I'm going to open a restaurant. I'm going to see how it goes. You really created a vibe for the city. So talk about that. Talk about the Midtown. Talk about what you've done there and how you feel about that.
Midtown, by the time I started Millworks, just for your audience, Harrisburg's a small city of about 50,000 people. Its heyday 100 years ago, it probably had 120,000 people. So, it's kind of part of that Rust Belt, loss of steel manufacturing. And so, you can buy real estate cheap because, there's an abundance of it because the population kind of depleted over a long period of time. And a lot of these cities in Pennsylvania through Ohio, we know that story. Harrisburg in particular, being the capital, has a lot of state buildings in the center of it that kind of disrupt an organic neighborhood flow restaurant scene. And so when you and I say Midtown, we're talking Midtown Harrisburg, which has that neighborhood density that a lot of larger urban areas I think survive on having that customer base there. And so it's a walkable part of our city. I think some people that have lived here for a long time really have nurtured Midtown over a long period. but it still needed some like core projects, I think, to turn the corner. Some developers, friends, people that I knew sort of back then, they're saying, well, let's build more residential, and then that'll attract, the amenity side of things. And I'm like, well, I think you need the amenities before people are attracted to moving into the area. It's a little bit of a chicken and an egg. But to me, man, Midtown needed something dynamic, something that was a destination draw as well. So a small city, probably like Tulsa, like Harrisburg, if it's a large project, it can't really subsist just on the neighborhood itself. We go out to eat, maybe a couple times a month, but to have a project that big, you really need to capture an audience that's more regional. And so that's kind of what I saw, was that to lift the neighborhood, it really needed something substantial that's going to bring people in from outside of the city as well. And luckily it did that. Now, Midtown Harrisburg, boy, do we have a gem of a city at large. I mean, Harrisburg, I'm a huge fan. I live in the city. I love the city, but Midtown in particular has some assets that, are hard to find anywhere really. But, we have a farmer's market that was built in the 1870s. It's an indoor market there. We have a great bookstore. One of the country's best bookstores that I've ever been in is right there on the block. We have an arts museum right around the corner. We have Radish and Rye, a neighborhood grocery store right there. A cinema, and there's I'm forgetting other things too. But there's just a lot of assets in this small neighborhood, and so in any case, it was more of a feeling of being able to support a community, help build in a community that values the things that I value, like can you walk to work? Is this are we going to build a vinyl castle in a farmer's field? Well, I don't know that we need to keep doing that as a culture. I think we need to relook at the assets, that have been here for a long time. So I just, I was really attracted to those idealistic, maybe, visions of what Midtown represented, and wanted to jump in there and help in any way that matched my talent, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you are a huge help and a huge part of the community. So I want to go back to the business, but I'm going to tie it right back into the community here. One of the things I found interesting. So okay, as I said, we do marketing, right? So Quench, CPG, food and beverage, Vigor, is an agency that does restaurants. Every year, we do an annual food trends. We talk about flavors. We talk about this, that, anything to do with food and beverage and trends, whether it's restaurant or CPG, whatever. So anyway, all that's to be said that farm to table was something that, probably was a big deal. Maybe 10 years ago in our food trend. We've done the trends now for over 16 years. So, where I'm going with this is, and this is actually a compliment, but it's an interesting thing to me, where farm to table became, I'll say, relevant. Okay, as you're in the city, I'm in Manhattan, and someone says about farm to table. So, I'm in the city. I'm going to get this stuff fresh from the farm. Well, you're all farm to table here in Harrisburg, and we did talk about it being a city, but let's face it, it's in a very rural area around it. And candidly, you are right across the street from the farmer's market. So, talk about the farm to table idea and what all is involved in it, and how do you keep that popular in an area that's somewhat rural?
Well, what's interesting, a lot of the restaurants in Philadelphia, New York, DC, they're pulling a lot of that farm to table, quote unquote, product from our area, from
no doubt.
Lancaster County, Lancaster County, York County, Dauphin County. A lot of these growers support a lot of those restaurants down there. A lot of our organic co-ops up here, make a lot of money in those larger markets. But it was like, well, why don't we have, restaurants that serve this product that, you can get in New York City, but you can't get like 10 miles away from where it's actually coming from,
We have to go to the farm to get it. You can't, no one's serving it to us. We have to go get it ourselves.
Yeah. And that was a real challenge in the first year of, running that, running the operation there, that we're driving around in trucks and picking stuff up, and, there's no infrastructure to go get it. But, to me, it was like, well, why wouldn't we take this opportunity of all this great product around here, and use it ourselves? So,
That's awesome.
But once you get in there, it comes with its challenges. For instance, and I don't know how much you want to get into the weeds of the restaurant industry business here, but in a larger market, New York, DC, Philly, obviously, your price per guest, might be $80, or and they're up. Where in the Harrisburg market, we're kind of fighting in that 35 to 45 if you're doing well. So you have access to this great product. Are there enough people that are willing to pay for it?
Right.
And there are a lot. The question was, are there enough? And I think it's about playing a slightly different strategy than you would, than say the Vetri group might play in Philly, or that there's going to be a menu price point that works in our area that you would probably lose your ass if you were doing that in New York City with rent costs as they are.
Sure.
So I think the strategy was really, okay, it's going to be farm to table, but how do we make that work in the market that we're in?
And I was always amazed too. Like, I go in and look at your menu, and I'll be like, "Oh, I know that farm," or "I've driven by there," or "Oh, this is where this came from." And so it's so cool to me, and I just found that really interesting, unique, and I just I admire you for trying that and doing that and succeeding at it. And that you're right next to the farmers market, right?
Yep. Right.
So
and it's just a lot of fun. When I make a new relationship with a new grower, go to their farm, see what they're doing. Locust Point, we're currently taking a break as they're kind of rebuilding their herd back up. They're a beef supplier out of Dover. Great beef. These guys don't even grass finish at the end. I mean, they're on pasture the whole time, yet still has a really, really great marbled finished product. But in any case, the first time I drove down to their farm and met them and saw what they're doing, and that's an exciting moment where, if we can work the costing into what we need to do and make everything work on both sides, and make that relationship go, that's a fun moment. Like not having to rely on a national beef production
provider. Sure.
These guys are down at Dover, and it's great product, and I wear their hat everywhere I go, and
that's awesome.
So it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing that you're doing, and it's a great concept. So now here we are in Midtown, and you mentioned it. We are a historic Harrisburg Broad Street Market. It's I think it's the oldest running farmers market in the country. Okay, so historic. It catches on fire. It's a next door neighbor to you, and you jumped in and helped. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the fire started at about 2:00 in the morning, and I was up there I got a phone call, and I was up there by 2:45, wondering if it was going to jump over and burn down the Millworks too, or how far this was going to go. And but in any case, a lot of us there in the neighborhood and in the city, it was a volunteer scenario of service for years at the Broad Street Market, trying to get its finances corrected, trying to get, the vendors feeling confident that they can make investments and grow that out. And we had done it. I mean, there was no vacancy in that market,
Yep.
by, before the pandemic. And And so when the fire happened, it's just a heartbreak for everybody. And but it was like first things first. It was like, how do we keep these vendors, engaged? How do we keep their livelihood, working in the meantime? So somebody had the idea of, hey, let's put up a temporary tent, so these guys could keep working. And but obviously the question is, where are you going to put the tent? There were some options of putting the tent, a mile away up at the farm show complex, or I thought, well, that's kind of the wrong direction. Like, we want to keep the vibrancy and the spirit alive right here. So I had a vacant lot that I had plans to do things on. But I said, let's just put those on hold. Let's have this tent go over next to the market. And so, the city and the market management finally got that up and running a couple months ago, and now they're just starting the process of rebuilding the brick market. Which, you're right, Michael. It's I think the slogan is the longest continuously operated indoor farmers market.
Okay, there you go. Perfect. But it's still amazing. It's amazing it's in Harrisburg. And the other thing too is, obviously it's a part of the community. It's important and all that. But to a degree, people can go there and get food. So in a way, I guess you could look at it as almost like a competitor to you, a restaurateur right next door. But yet you stepped in to help in every single way that you can. And I think that's really super cool. I think it's admirable. And not to mention that, the farmer's market is, if you're one of the suburbanites that roll in for your, special beef or whatever, that's one thing. But it really does support the city as far as a food desert, right? It helps put food for the locals and that don't have a car, that can't necessarily drive to the local grocery store, right? It's really a part of the community that's a necessity.
100%. For those people that haven't been there, aren't going to go, it's too far away or whatever. But if you on a nice Saturday, you walk through the Broad Street Market, this is probably the most diverse confluence of demographics and ages probably in our region, I would say.
I agree.
And there's like a brotherhood vibe to it. It's everybody's having fun, grabbing a bite to eat. It's not political. So to have such a diverse environment that's not political, in our time, in our age, that's a treasure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
You just where do you see that? So, and to your point though, that there's a lot of different types of people that rely on that market on a weekly basis for their fresh foods. Really difficult to come by otherwise for them, if they don't have a car. So, I think that was the idea of this, public-private partnership, with the city. I said, okay, let's put the tent up. I'll give you the lot for a couple of years until we get this sorted out. Mm-hmm. And so, I was just glad to help. And, I think we've lost some vendors, and the tent wasn't able to accommodate everyone. There's challenges in the infrastructure of a tent, cooking mm-hmm. equipment in a tent. And, mm-hmm. and so that took a lot of time, from the time that tent opened from the fire. That was almost a year.
Yeah.
So, we went from about 30 small businesses, in the main building that burned down. I believe there's 8 or 9 vendors. So, mm-hmm. Even though there's a great effort being made, we still lost a lot of vendors. So it's going to take a lot of work to rebuild that vendor list and that density and that excitement.
Sure.
So, it's going to be a long, hard road, I do think.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, back to the Millworks now. Okay, so Millworks is known for its great selection of craft beers, right? So I'm going to throw some of your menu items out, and I want you to pair it up with one of your craft beers. Is that okay?
Oh, no. Okay. All right. I'll do my best.
You got some notes. Okay.
I'm not the brewer.
Okay. Well, that's all right.
I have my beer list.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. You don't have to be the brewer. It's really about your palate, right? So, I mean,
Yep.
it's all in the palate, whatever you like. So, all right, your wood grilled Cobb salad.
Wood grilled Cobb salad. I would think we would want to go with a Goza.
Okay.
So that's kind of a low ABV. It's very effervescent. That's going to be
Nice and light.
Yep, nice and light. Magic Maker. Okay.
Perfect. Buffalo chicken pizza.
I would go with something heavier. Like I think that's cause for an IPA.
Nice. Yeah.
I think that's our bumper crop hazy IPA. It's about 7%. It might wreck your palate a little bit. You have one IPA and everything starts to taste a little funky thereafter. But you could get a buffalo chicken pizza down, that's for sure.
Very cool. Wagyu burger. And where do you get your Wagyu in Pennsylvania?
Now you say Wagyu, I say Wagyu.
Wagyu, potato. Okay.
So we have there's a grower from Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. So Camp Hill is right across the river from Harrisburg, and Bob Myers is his name. He's a doctor over there, and he has several Wagyu beef farms, and so he's our Wagyu supplier, and it's F5 Wagyu. So this is the top of the line. This is the stuff that you're. And I think he sells a lot of the bloodline back to Australia, and Australia then I think back channels back into Japan. There's some relationship there, but in any case, great beef. What are you going to eat with, or what are you going to drink with a Wagyu burger? I think you need a heritage pub ale, a clean drinker, something that's going to just kind of cleanse that a little bit. Like, I don't know, right now it's summertime, it's really hot out.
Yeah.
I might change that depending on the season, but I think right now, you start with a pub ale, get the Wagyu, have another pub ale as you're going,
Perfect. All right. This is just intriguing to me because I have not had it. I'm not even sure what it is. 16-hour ramen. I mean, what is 16-hour ramen? What are you cooking there for 16 hours?
Oh man, this is the money pot here. This is, if you're coming to Millworks, I don't think you can get a broth like this until you hit Philly or New York City.
Okay.
So what we do, I do it at home too, but you're going to do like a stock pot, with all your normal, ingredients, garni, your aromatics, and but we put a lot of chicken feet in that, and a lot of pig trotters because it's very gelatinous. We're going to get all the good stuff out of that. So the broth then is left with a very silky texture, and it's just dynamite. So we'll do that for at least 16 hours, is why we call it the 16-hour ramen. Overnight's not going to do it. It's got to go 16. Sometimes we go, longer than that. And then that'll reduce down for about an hour or two, when we're done with that broth. And so, it's a flavor bomb. It's my favorite thing on the menu. So in any case, I got on a tangent there, but I would drink the Mexican lager with the Que Bueno. Those Mexican lagers, those are German beers, but as you know, I mean, you guys are in this industry, better than I do. That Mexican lager growth trend is
unbelievable.
Is unbelievable. And so our brewer Terry Hallbaker, he does a great job with that beer.
That's awesome. And you just answered one of my questions. I was going to ask you what's your favorite thing on the menu. So it's obvious. And I've been to your restaurant quite a bit. I've never had the ramen. I didn't know what it was. So I didn't know to order it. So I will be in within 2 weeks. I will be in to have the ramen. So
all right. Well, you have to text me. Let me know if I overhype that.
No. That's what this is about. It's podcast. You can hype anything. And I don't know that the city of Harrisburg is going to have this influx of people coming in off the podcast. We'll see. I mean, hopefully it will, but we'll see. Now, you're not just in Harrisburg. You're also in Camp Hill. You have a restaurant called the Watershed, and you also have Cork and Fork. You want to talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, so Watershed Pub is the first liquor licensed establishment in the small borough of Camp Hill, which is right across the river from Harrisburg. And we opened that in perfect timing, right at the start of the pandemic. So, we were totally finished and ready to launch in April of 2020, and
Yeah, geez.
the whole world shut down in March, the month before. But we finally got it open through the pandemic, and it limped along here and there through that. It was a really challenging time, but now it's hit its stride. I think it's right where it needs to be. Engagement is good, and we try to listen to the community and support what it is that they're looking for too. So I'm really proud of that brand, and the staff over there is great. Through the pandemic, on the outside of it, a lot of restaurants, were struggling and went down.
Sure.
And one of those was an Italian eatery, sort of new Italian, in downtown Harrisburg, right by the Capitol, called Cork and Fork, and that was started by an entrepreneur about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's been really fun. That's like its own playground of food. So you can play with concepts down in there too. And again, it just came with a really strong staff. And that's the name of the game. That's what this business is. It's having a good staff that cares about the product in the same way you do. So it's a little time management, obviously, but it creates. I'm sure these guys that have 10 restaurants or whatever, I could see that it starts to become an ecosystem that, everybody is helping each other in it, like we had a broken arm the other day, not in work, but outside of work. And, before I know it, I wasn't even notified of it. And there's somebody from one of the other restaurants in there helping that night,
That's great.
So you really start to see these guys really helping each other out, and that's pretty exciting, man. That's pretty
That's cool.
exciting to see. It has like a life of its own. It's not me. It's really them.
That's awesome. Well, restaurants are our people, right? I mean, it's made up of people, and the experience that one gets in a restaurant is only as good as the person preparing the food, the person serving the food, and how they're treated throughout that experience. So, you got to take care of people. It's really important. I mean, same with our agencies. I mean, the agencies, I always say our assets walk out the door every day at 5:00. We're just people. We don't have widgets. We don't have food. We don't have a warehouse full of product. We just have people and intelligence and their passion. So it's something you have to nurture for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So what's next for? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we got one more coming online. I'm really excited about.
Okay,
it's right around the corner from the Millworks. It's on 3rd Street, so it's in Midtown. So it's part of that, destination Midtown strategy, I guess. And it's a little bar that was called the 3rd Street Cafe.
Okay.
So for those in the Harrisburg area that might hear this, that's right around the corner from Millworks and directly across the street from the Susquehanna Arts Museum. And so it came available. I bought it coming out of COVID. And we're finally ready to launch this thing probably before Christmas now. So
Fantastic.
We're right in the thick of it. This is go time, and it gets a little crazy. But the concept there is doing a cocktail bar that also serves as like a cool neighborhood bar as well. The name of it will be, it's kind of like announcing a name.
There you go.
Before the baby's born, you're not supposed to do that, I guess. But
a reveal party here.
A reveal party. It's High Dive is the name of it's going to be the name of it. So it's like kind of dive bar, but you can get some high end product in there as well. And that's kind of part of the strategy when the market's done with the tent. um, which you can see from High Dive. It's right there. And you can see from Millworks. We'll end up doing something there on the corner where that tent is. And then I think Midtown has enough amenities on it where it really, really feels like a night out. You got HMAC, Harrisburg Midtown Arts Center down the street. You got lots of other, engagement points down there. So I'm just really excited about just marching that along. It takes a long time,
you should be.
but it's fun.
You should be very proud. It's what you've done is for the community. And the vibrancy of the community, which may be as important as anything, right? Is really, really, really amazing and fantastic for the city. So I have one last question. I ask this of everybody, and you can't pick any of your own restaurants. You can't pick your ramen noodles. Sorry.
Okay.
The question is, if you had one final meal, what would you eat and why?
That is an impossible question.
It's a tough one.
Well, let me ask, how about you? What is yours?
Oh, boy. One final meal. I'd probably be in New York City, Il Mulino, the original, and I would have to get the white truffle pasta.
Okay. Yeah. I think for me, it would be up in New York City. I think it's called Shanghai 21. It's a really great dim sum place, and they're hard to find,
Yes, they are.
And those soup dumplings, when they're done right, well, they're great. So I think it's a soup dumpling for me. I'm a lowbrow guy,
Yeah, no, hey, you know what? I get the dumpling thing because both my daughters live in Manhattan, and they took me to a Chinese Tuxedo, and that's now a place I'll go a fair amount when I'm in New York City. I just love that place. It's a really cool vibe. If you haven't been, you should check that out too. It's really awesome. Yeah, it's Chinese Tuxedo. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Anyway, cool stuff. Well, Josh, hey, look, I look forward to meeting you in person. I will have the ramen, and I will make that happen soon. So I just really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and congratulations on what you've done for, I'll say, yourself as an entrepreneur, but the city of Harrisburg.
Mike, it was great to meet you. We've got to do it in person. Shoot me a text, and
I will do it. Absolutely.
We'll get a beer. All right. Sounds
Done.
good. Thanks
Perfect.
for having me.
Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate it.
See you.
All right, bye.